It's Super Videos back at you for another Q&A video. This is going to be Q&A number 19. So, as always, if you're not caught up with The Walking Dead's TV show and comic book, you may not want to watch this video because I'm going to be answering questions and I may spoil some things for you. So let's get right into this. Let's start with The Walking Dead show questions. The first question comes from OmEr KhAn and he asks, do you think the Lucille deaths could have been better? In terms of the actual sequence, I think it was very well done, but I would have rather have seen just one death. In my opinion, I still think that one death overshadowed the other. I think Glenn's death overshadowed Abraham's death, and if they just did stick to one, it would have been much better. And not do the cliffhanger, of course. Show it in the finale of season 6. Also, keep it lit on spoilers because that leaked like a couple months before we actually saw the episode. So it took the surprise element out, in my opinion. So 3 things I would have done. Not do the cliffhanger, just have one death, and the last one is kind of dealt with if you don't do the cliffhanger, but of course make it so that the spoiler doesn't come out. But that's a good question. The next question comes from Maddox and they ask, is Daryl a villain? No, I do not think so. I don't know why you would think so. If you're asking if he's going to become a villain in the future, there's room for that. It all depends if Negan can actually turn him into a savior, and I don't think he will. So, short answer, no. The next question comes from Imperial and they ask, do you think it will be more beneficial to the Walking Dead series to keep Dwight a villain rather than join the survivors? That's one of the things that I really liked about the comic book, that specific sequence where Dwight joins the survivors. It makes the story unique. It adds something new to the story, and I would love to still see that in the TV show. So no, I don't think it would be beneficial. I think it's best to keep that in there because of how iconic it is and how well received it was by the fans. Dwight playing the double agent and joining forces with Rick. The next question comes from TheBlackAntiHero and they ask, who do you think is more tough, would win in a fight, Shane or Merle? I would probably say Shane because of the training he's had, because he's a police officer, of course, or he was a police officer. So I think he would be tougher in a fight. The next question comes from Maddox and they ask, is Carl and Negan's relationship ruined because of Daryl? And he's referring to how Daryl basically took a chunk of Carl's storyline by going to the sanctuary. So I think there's still room to have Carl and Negan's relationship be there. You know, not to that extent that it was in the comics, but still be there. But I do agree with you that it did hurt that relationship a little bit. I do agree with that. The next question is from Imperial again, and they ask, do you think any of the main survivors will turn on Rick and join Negan? I'm thinking Rosita. What are your thoughts? No, I don't think that's going to happen. There is going to be differences between them, and we've seen that with Spencer, but I don't think anyone would turn away from Rick. Now, of course, Spencer does that to a degree, but in terms of actually joining the Saviors and attacking the survivors, I don't think anyone's gonna do that. And you mentioned Rosita. If you remember from last episode, she told Eugene to make her a bullet, probably so she could kill Negan. So that's basically a no for Rosita, at least from what you're saying. But again, nobody else either, I don't think. The next question comes from 0718 Dragon Lord, and they ask, what if Dale survived up to the point of the Lucille lineup scene? How would it be if he were the victim? It would be sad, of course, and depending on how his character would have been built up by that point, it might have been more emotional because he was the moral compass of the group. But in terms of it being different, I don't think it would have been different because it's still losing someone we've been attached to for a while. The next question is also from 0718 Dragon Lord, and they ask, it's basically the same type of question. What if Shane survived up until the point of the Lucille lineup scene? Would he get the survivors to continue opposing Negan, or like Rick, go along with it until all out war? I think if Shane was alive by this point, he would probably have plans earlier than Rick. I don't think he would just sit back and kneel to Negan the way Rick has up until this point. I think he would have been more vocal about it, but I don't think he would attack. I think he would think about how to attack and try to gather forces instead of just being irrational and just attacking, because that's going to get people killed. The next question comes from Philip Blake, and they ask, do you think Negan will Lucille Spencer? I don't think he'll Lucille Spencer. I think he's going to kill Spencer in this half season. I don't think he'll Lucille him. The next question comes from David Farley, and they ask, do you think we will ever see the Eugene flashback when he was captured by the Saviors, or is it too late? You answered your own question. It's way too late at this point. If they were going to show that, they should have done it in the premiere. Now let's move on to the Walking Dead show / comic book series questions. The first question is from Steven Moraga, and he asks, do you think Shiva should still be alive in the comics and should not die in the show? I think there was more room for doing more with Shiva in the comic book and not kill her off so early, but in terms of her not dying in the show, I don't think they're gonna do that, and I don't think they should, because obviously cost. Because Shiva is CGI, so it's gonna add a lot of costs. I would rather see them spend that money on All Out War rather than seeing Shiva still alive. The next question is from Gavin Cottrell, and they ask, do you think The Walking Dead will end on a big cliffhanger? No, I don't think so. We all saw the backlash they got from having a season cliffhanger. So if they want to have a series cliffhanger, that would be the worst thing, and I don't think they will ever do that. The next question comes from David Farley, and he asks, would you rather see them go back to the prison or the farm if you had to choose one? I would say the prison, because it's more protected and it's basically closed off. The farm was very open, so anyone could just go. But the prison, as bad as it was living in the prison, they were protected, at least from walkers. And even from people. If the governor didn't have that tank, it would be harder for him to attack the prison. But that's a good question. The next questions are comic book questions. The first one is from Jiggity Goose Cohen, and they ask, now that the hilltop is over in the comic book, where do you think the people there live after the attack? So they could obviously rebuild the hilltop after, but I think that would be repetitive because it happened in All Out War as well, where Alexandria was attacked. They rebuilt it, and basically they went back to Alexandria. So I think it would be repetitive if they do the same thing. So I do agree with you that if it's attacked, it should be destroyed completely to the point that they can't rebuild it. Now, where would the people live? I think they would be scattered around the communities that we have. The Kingdom, Alexandria, and the Sanctuary. I don't think anyone is going to go to the Sanctuary right now, given that they are not really on good terms with the survivors, but still, I think some people could go there. The next question comes from Nikolai Shjad, and they ask, do you think the group that Eugene is talking with is good or evil? I think they're somewhere in between. I don't think they're completely good, and I don't think they're completely evil. I think they're in between. Same as our group, because of course they're not really the good guys. They're not evil, but they're not really the good guys. They do things to survive, and those things may not be moral things to do. But given the circumstances and the world they're living in, those actions are justified to a degree. That's it for this Q&A video. Thanks for participating. If you want to participate in my next Q&A video, write your questions in the comment section below. Make sure to put Q&A before your comment so I can find it, and I'm going to be doing my next Q&A next week. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll be back for another video.